Thank you all for joining today. We'll be starting here in about 5 minutes. Just a reminder, this is being recorded. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll start the webinar here in about 2 minutes. Just a reminder, this is being recorded and will be distributed. Looks like we have a few more people logging on, but I'll go ahead and get things started. Thank you all for joining today's webinar on how to define the right DevOps metrics with Targetprocess and Icon Agility Services. My name is Alex Brungart. I'm Icon's Business Development Manager, and I'll be your moderator today. I look forward to introducing our speakers, Nishant Sasadaran and Mark Debian. First off, some housekeeping items. First of all, we will be recording this webinar and it will be distributed to all registrants. We will also post it on our website. Second, please type any questions into the Q&A panel. We will collect and address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. And if you need any technical support, please contact us via the chat, and we will do our best to support you. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and hand it off to Nishant and Mark. We look forward to presenting on how to define the right DevOps metrics. Thank you for your time. Nishant?
Thank you, Alex, for the introduction. Good morning, everybody. This is a webinar from ICON in partnership with Targetprocess. I'm one of your speakers here, Nishant Sasidharan. I am the Business Agility Practice Lead and the DevOps Practice Lead for ICON. I'm joined here by Mark DB, who is the Senior Solutions Engineer at Targetprocess. We have put together something which is very important in the VUCA world today and the DevOps practice that that is leading us to business agility. So without any delay, let me introduce Mark and give him a chance to introduce Targetprocess, and then I will talk a little bit more about ICON and we can get started. Mark?
Thanks, Nishant. Again, my name is Mark Dabian. I'm based in Chicago. I've been with Targetprocess for a little while here, but I've been in this market space for a long time. And the thing that I really like about Targetprocess, and the thing that we try to bring to all of our customers, is really our ability to scale the solution from the team level up into the portfolio and program, and then up obviously to the highest levels of the organization. Today, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with the intro here, but just know that we are working with customers at all different levels. We certainly are focused on and primarily around the popular ones that we hear. SAFe is certainly a big one that we'll be covering, and that's how I have this set up today. But it's not actually just for SAFe. We can do other types of capabilities and other types of methods if you're doing different types of scaling models. And in terms of our competitive advantages, we are very active in the insurance industries. We're very active in very large banks. We've got lots of technical customers doing very detailed software and gaming type solutions. So if there's something a specific around the types of customers or the details, we'll be able to answer those questions at the end if you have something specific around Targetprocess. We also have one of our partner managers. Our partner manager, Nick, is also behind the scenes here watching. So if you need anything from a partner standpoint with Nick Horstman, he's actually on the chat as well. So with that, I'll just hand it back over to you, Nishant, and I'm really happy that you're allowing Targetprocess to present this with ICON today, and hopefully it'll be an informative session.
Thank you so much, Mark. A little bit about ICON. We have been in the industry for almost 28 years today. We have been, very much involved with Agile and Agile transformations throughout the industry. We have done some major transformations. We have covered pretty much every kind of industry that you can think of in the market. We are headquartered in Missouri, and we are the #1 gold partner for Scaled Agile. We continuously contribute to the framework that you all are using today. It's one of the #1 framework used in the world for scaling Agile and helping businesses reach, to thrive in this competitive market. We also are the implementation partner for EBA, which was the first step into business agility. And we have co-authored a lot of courses. Even the DevOps course for Scaled Agile has been co-authored by ICON. Having said that, we are going to talk a little bit more into the DevOps metrics today, and how DevOps is going to help us in the journey towards business agility. So outcomes for today. What are we going to talk about? We are going to talk about some of the key DevOps metrics that drive more value. We are going to see how these metrics, can provide a full picture in the value stream, and Mark, after that, is going to demonstrate how these metrics can be seen on the Targetprocess tool and how it can help you see all the metrics from the business standpoint until the team's point of view in one tool. So let's get into it. This is the latest and greatest SAFe picture, and this was designed to help companies reach business agility over a period of time. We started with scaling agile, and then we added multiple layers in where business was involved. How can we bring strategy to this whole mix, and take this journey together in order to get a company to thrive in this competitive market. One of the important things we have discussed in previous webinars is how DevOps helps speed up this process. How can you build security in? How can you build transparency in? And how you can build quality throughout this whole process. So we're not going to go through that process again today, but instead we're going to see how we can measure that. How can you measure security? How can you measure quality? How can you measure the right strategic initiatives that were created? And how can you see all this layered up from top to bottom with an alignment that would give us a complete picture on where we stand and what we need to improve? So how do we do this? Again, value stream is the key process. We go from concept to cash. We define everything in between the concept or the idea that we have until it's been delivered to our customer and we receive a feedback from the customer. Again, in previous webinars, I've talked more about this being just not the external customer, it can be an internal customer, and how we can go through this continuous process of improvement, adding to the success of that customer value. So in order to deliver value, we have to go through this process of collaboration. We have to go through this process of alignment at each level. Once you have an initiative, the strategy then turns into multiple levels, which travels down to the team to deliver output. That output needs to convert back into outcomes before it comes back to the customer where the value is realized. Now, the agile part of it takes the concept to a coding stage point, and the DevOps drives that process of quality, security, and gets it to the hands of the customer. So again, I mean, how do you measure all this? There are different ways to measure the agile metrics. There are different ways to measure the DevOps metrics. Today, we will start looking at what this means, in terms of outcomes. The DevOps outcomes, again, I mean, most of you must have seen this picture. We have always talked about how to get to market faster. How can you achieve these results? Now, these are possible to achieve. Well, again, how do you realize that you have achieved these results? It's through measurement tools. It's through defining the right metrics. Now, to define right metrics, there's an important aspect which starts at the business value or the business results. We need to know what the quality is, what the productivity is, what the engagement of the customers, the employees is, and the time to market. Now, to define these metrics, we need to start with three important aspects. One is your health and maturity metrics, which is your qualitative metrics. Two, which is your delivery and performance metrics, which is your quantitative metrics. And three is your business outcomes or results. This is the only thing that can get you to realize the DevOps outcomes that we talked about in the previous screen. So in order to reach or get to these DevOps outcomes, we need those three key metrics. And those three key metrics are, again, qualitative, quantitative, and business outcomes. If you don't define this in this order, you're not going to be able to see each of those areas coming to life, or you don't know what needs to change or what kind of improvement items you need to add in order to get there. Now, every stage of this, most of the companies usually measure the performance metrics. The quantitative metrics are always there. You all measure it really well. We are capable of doing it. The tools actually show you those quantitative metrics. The place where we lag behind today are business outcomes and the health and maturity metrics, which are the qualitative metrics. When you start defining these metrics, there are some key items to consider. So we need to have some impact metrics in our impact metrics defined in our DevOps outcomes. We need some leading indicators which define whether we are going towards the right place. We need some balancing metrics, which are guardrails, which define whether we are going in the right way. Do we fall off, or do we stay on course? And then we also need some internal and external measures, which tells us if our customer is getting the value that is received. Now, if you look at the screen, you would also see some of the examples of these kind of metrics. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but these are commonly used metrics. These are examples of metrics that you can define. So while defining your DevOps metrics, it's not one size fits all. It needs to be customized for your environment, for your business. So please go ahead and start looking at the kind of metrics that would define that process for you, and try to add some impact metrics, some leading indicators, some balancing metrics, and some measures that will tell you if your customer is getting the value that is required. At the end of the day, the value realized is when the customer is getting what they're looking for, when you're able to actually understand and respond to the customer needs at the right time. The next thing that is there are 4 levels of metrics. We are all aware of the team level of metrics. We all do this. We calculate the performance metrics all the time. Again, the team metrics are in place, but when we define team metrics, we need to start looking at the health of the team as well. We need to see if the team is able to function together in order to reach the desired DevOps outcomes. Then once we have nailed it, then we actually go and scale it to team of teams. Here, we actually look at the product health. We look at, what is the overall DevOps health. We look at what that art health is. If we have multiple arts, then we are going to look at how the arts are performing in that industry. Once we have done that, we define your portfolio metrics. The portfolio metrics, again, is important because until you know that your outputs are meeting your outcomes defined in the strategy, there's no way you're going to be able to see the full value delivery that has been defined. So you have to define portfolio metrics. And from there on, you define, these all roll up into an enterprise level metrics, which is, flow, value, and quality, along with your maturity metrics, which tells you whether you're going towards a growth path, are you improving on a regular basis, are you adding improvement items on a regular basis. So all these 4 levels are very, very important while you define your path towards business agility, especially with DevOps, with the value flow in DevOps, where you're looking at how value flows from concept to cash. We want to make sure that these 4 levels of metrics are defined, and we should have a means to see these 4 levels of metrics, which you're going to see through the Targetprocess tool. And Mark is going to take us through that journey where he's going to show us how these 4 levels of metrics are rolled up, and how you can see a rolled up view, to how you can see from a team standpoint, to a team of teams standpoint, and from an enterprise standpoint. So without much delay, I'm going to hand this over to Mark, where he will talk a little bit more about the metrics from a Targetprocess point of view, how you can see the defined metrics in the tool, and take that process through a very interactive session through the tool, to show you how these can be seen in one place and can be defined in one place. Mark, I
Great.
would hand that
Yep.
over to you.
Thank you, Nishant, and that was a really good overview. I know it was a little bit focused around the safe results, but I think the safe results really speak to a lot of different people. And you also mentioned kind of one tool. I have been in this industry for a long time, and to be honest, there isn't one tool that's going to give us everything that we need. So I will be speaking a little bit about some of the integrations that we have, specifically around things like source code, maybe some of the testing tools you might have out there. We have the ability to bring in webhooks and other types of integrations. We do have an integration with Jira as well, with ADO as well. So if you have your teams in different entities, we can also bring those in as well. So that's what we'll be covering a little bit. So I'll be switching over now into into my demo. So if you just want to give me the controls there, let me just
There you
start
go.
sharing, and then we'll take it from here and be able to show how Target Process can achieve some of those metric results that you were just speaking of. Nishant, can you see my screen there with the objectives and key results on the upper left?
Mark, it's clear. Yes, we
It's
can
good.
see it.
Excellent. All right, so so what we're looking at here is really is Target Process. So this is our solution, our one solution. And this map here that I'm showing is really just demonstrating the types of entities and what I like to call sometimes containers that we can use to go ahead and map out our end-to-end flow, that concept to cache that Nishant was talking about. So, at the high level, we have different, each of these represents a different type of an entity or a container that we can use. We can certainly start with an idea. We'll break that idea down into the feature level. And then from there, we'll break it down further into the story level, task bugs, however we want to run that. If we're doing integrations with something like Jira or other tools that are out there, we can then integrate the features and the stories at that level to those different entities. Once the teams start doing their work, then we can actually package up that work. Again, this is where we're going to do those integrations with some of the DevOps tools that are out there or the source control solutions that are there. And then we have an entity that I'm going to be using called the deployment, which means we're going to have a package and a build, which might be our bundle of work, but then at some point we need to deploy this. Some of my customers have multiple deployments. Maybe they have different customers they need to roll this out to, or maybe it's by environment, or maybe it's by server, or other ways that we can do that. So it's the same basically cookie cutter deployment, or maybe it's a little bit different. But we're gonna walk through an example of taking that idea and moving it all the way through to deployments. So we're not going to cover everything in Target Process because that would take a really long time, but hopefully we'll cover some of the key metrics and basics. Just a note on what we can do with any of these entities. If you see over here on the lower left-hand side, we can create our own dashboards, reports, roadmaps, lists, and boards on any of these assets. So if you want to track a board for your risks or a board for your impediments or a dashboard or a roadmap for those, we can certainly very easily do that. Out of the box, we have a lot of those that come pre-configured for the different phases that or states that we want to do. So that that's what we'll be covering today. What we're looking at here is another integration. We have an integration with Miro. So when we start our big level planning, we can plan out something like a portfolio canvas. This then is going to play into some of those metrics that Nishant was talking about. So our qualitative metrics, we can start to kind of come up with a big idea for that, use maybe a nice Miro board type of a visual indicators, and then we're going to actually put those into Target Process. So that's where we're going to go next, and I'm going to walk through some of the views that I have set up for us here that we can use to see that. So with that, we're going to start here at the portfolio level. So this is my portfolio to team overview. At a high level, we're going to capture those strategic initiatives that we've just mentioned a second ago. So these are my big strategic objectives, or I can have different levels of objectives. And then we want to break those down as we do our planning into something like a key result. So in here, we can track those key results. We can set our start values, how much we expect to be, getting value out of these different key results. And then that all rolls up into these strategic objectives. So this is just a list view of those objectives. We can obviously have different types of reporting around those objectives. But eventually what we're going to do down when we break the ideas down into lower levels is we'll have those ideas roll up into here. So our portfolio epics or our features or our stories can contribute to these metrics if we want to wire them up that way. You can decide if you want to go ahead and link them. Sometimes these are a little bit less quantitative, and you might want to have some that aren't directly linked. So it's up to you on how you want to configure those. But this is just a good way to track and manage the big objectives and roll them up. Again, this is just one dashboard that we could use at a high level when we're doing our strategic planning. Again, we can break down our strategic themes into smaller key results. Those key results then can be tracked, and we can use the data underneath there to make sure that we're managing the details around that. Once we have that strategy planned, then we can break that work down. So here I have my ideas coming in to a funnel. We're capturing those new ideas. From here, we want to go ahead and align those ideas to our solution investments so we can make sure that we have the investment categories set correctly and that we're managing that work. And then I can take this idea and I can actually create my portfolio backlog off of that. So we're going to generate a new portfolio epic, or maybe a capability or a feature at a lower level, and allow that work to be generated, and then I can track that all the way back to the initial idea. This is great because then I can track the flow from the very first creation of the first idea all the way through to the last deployment. And we're able to then, if you wanted to see how long it took us to deliver one new idea that came in, that might be, you know, multiple months, might be multiple years, depending upon how long it takes, but we can certainly track and manage the details around that. But it starts with that idea, and then we align that to our portfolio. As we start to manage the work, we can track the progress of that portfolio in our Epic progress metrics, as well as something like a planned investment, or investment versus actual cost. So here we're looking at, over time, some of the details around our, you know, what we invested on versus how much it cost us. What was that the right, you know, level, or did we overinvest, or did we go over on our costs? So we can track those types of metrics here at a strategy level. All right, so once you have the strategy set, once you have your portfolio epics, we're going to break that work down, and we'll start doing some more work at a program level. So when I say program level, that means we've broken the portfolio epics, or the epics, down into our features, and this is a feature funnel, which is showing us the work that we want to do. I can then add the features from this funnel down into my backlog. So when I say moving into the backlog, and we're going to put a weighted score on this, we're going to add time criticality, or business value, or a risk reduction score on here, so we can then actually say how big is this feature, what's the weighted shortest job first for that feature. We can organize the work by that. We can easily put in additional values in here, and make sure that as we're doing our planning, that we're tracking exactly the size and the work that we want to do. And this is all helping us to get into breaking that work down for the teams. So this is one way to take the work at a high level, breaking it down into the lower levels. Once we have that, we can then do things like capacity planning. So this is allowing me to say, hey, this is how much work we have. We can track the capacity available for that, and then we can decide if we want, you know, this work to be assigned to different teams. So I can assign this work to different teams, do a what if scenario planning in here in capacity, and then I can either apply this change, or I can revert this change. Now, setting this capacity is going to be important, because we're going to use that capacity later when we do our metrics to say, did we go over or under? Can we improve upon our planning model and how we're doing that planning model? So this is just one of the, you know, number of data points that we're collecting from a feature perspective, from a weighted shortest job first perspective, and here from a capacity perspective. Once you have your capacity plan, you've got your plan set, the teams are going to start to work on that work. But before we do that, we can break that down. We can look at our program board view of this, and this is showing us features and stories where we have those dependencies. So it's easy for us to go ahead and add new ones in here. If you want to add a dependency across this work, I can create a new relation between this and, say, a story up here, and we can make it a dependency. So it'll automatically draw that dependency on there, and we're showing the indicators of that work as well. So we can see where we have the dependencies across that work, across the teams, and then the top across here is showing us the current sprints and the sprints that we have. So we, you know, allows us to make sure that teams have planned the work at that level. Okay, that takes us from idea to feature. Now it's time for us to work on the work. So we're going to start to do that, and then we're going to get into some of the metrics that we're going to cover. When we get into the metrics, we'll be looking at productivity, efficiency, and quality. But first, we need to actually get work into that and start to use some of these other containers that we have. So when I open up a specific feature, on this feature, I've got 6 stories already on there. Let's go ahead and add a new story on this feature. So this will be user story 7. And we'll say it's a business story. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and create a brand new one. When I open up that story, you can see that it's in a state of opened. Okay, I haven't put any other details in here. We haven't related it to anything else, but we do know which, you know, which program increment it's going to be aligned to, maybe which feature, because we created it under that feature. We have an integration with our Azure DevOps. So I can come in here and I can select the repo that we're going to start to build. What this is going to do is it's going to align this story to the work that the teams are going to do. So when I select the repository here, this is going to trigger DevOps to go ahead out and create a new branch for this story, and you can see that the branch has been created here. It's tracking that the teams are doing their work. You can see that it's in WIP right now. It went ahead and automatically moved the state of this to dev, so we can track the cycle time and the lead time for this. And then it also added a package to this, so we know which package this is associated to. So we have the feature, we created the story. Now we've actually created the repository branch that we want to go ahead and use, and we can now drill into the details of this package and see exactly what's happening. But before we do that, let's go ahead and do some work inside of here so we can watch. You can see the status auto changed. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and approve this change. So let's go into the actual Azure DevOps here. When I go into Azure DevOps, it's showing me this record. This is the branch that was just created. Off of this, I can go ahead and approve this. So if I go ahead and approve this branch from here, that's going to send that trigger back over to target process. So let me just go back over there real quick. And now you see it just moved to ready for testing. So now we've got this updated here for ready for testing. One of the things we're also doing is that we're updating the comments as well, so we can bring that information in. So as this work starts to progress and the teams are in Azure or GitLab or whatever else they're using for their source control, we can then bring that information back over, and we can track the time, the cycle time, and the lead time for this specific story. If you scroll down the bottom here, you can see we're already tracking our lead and our cycle time. There's not a lot because we just created it, but again, even from a minute by minute standpoint, we can go ahead and create that detail. Okay, so that is getting the work from the idea all the way down to the base code, and now we're starting to actually build that back up again. If I went ahead and approve this, it would go to merge automatically, and then we could move it to deploy as well. We did assign a release to this, and that release then will have specific builds underneath that. So if I look at this specific release here, release 5.1.2, which is the one we assigned this story to, we can see which builds underneath there, and we can track the details around that, including all of the user stories. So this is the manifest of all of the work and what we're doing from a release perspective. All right, so all of that got me basically from the very beginning of the idea all the way through to getting the work delivered out. Now we're going to start to look at how do we use the metrics that we have inside of Target Process to really show the flow of the work and make sure that we can make sure that the work that we just did from a team perspective, getting that work all the way down to the source control level, and then building it back up into our packages and aligning it to our deployments is being efficient, that we're being productive, and that we have good quality as well. So the next section is going to be looking at 3 different sections of metrics that I have, and we're going to jump into that right now. So the first one is productivity. So you saw that I created that release, and that release is aligned to a deployment. So now I can go to my deployment board, and we can track exactly what's going on for these different deliveries and these deployments. So if I was a release train engineer or a release engineer that I'm waiting to see what's going on, I can then drill into each one of these and see all of that detail that we just saw. I'm aligning this specific one to the different states so I can see what's in progress. Here I can also track where I have a dependency or a blocker. So it looks like delivery 4.1.2, which is a deployment, was rolled back for some reason, and actually that's a blocker now because delivery 3.2 can't go into production. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the details page for delivery 3.2 here, and you can see that it's in status in progress. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to roll that one back as well. So I could do that manually in the other solution, or I can actually trigger that from here. If I go down to my custom field, I've got a rollback trigger here, and I can actually trigger that right from here. When I trigger the rollback here, that went ahead and it actually moved delivery 3.2 over here into into the rollback state. So we automatically went ahead and did that, and we could have done that from any delivery tool that we're using, if we're using a specific one, or we can do that directly in here from Target Process. And if we go back in here, we can see that we went ahead and added some comments as well. We did the rollback, we did the testing, and we can see if it was successful or not. So it allows me to see, and it looks like that is in the rollback state. So that's one way to make sure that we can do the automation and track what's going on from a delivery standpoint, and now we can measure the details of of what's in one of those rollbacks. We can also track these deployments on a board view. So here we're tracking where each of those deployments are, making sure that we've aligned them correctly. If we do have another type of an impediment, or if we want to look at the blockers here as well, we can track that as well. So this is showing me the cycle time and the lead time for each of these deliveries, and we can manage the details around that. So this concept of the deployment being a delivery and our ability to manage those deliveries really allows us then to go in and drill into some of the metrics and see the details around these different DevOps deployments and details. So the first thing we're going to look at is some productivity metrics. So I've got a productivity dashboard here that we created. This productivity dashboard has 3 different columns, and it's showing me a couple of different details. So how many deployments have we done by PI and our average? So this is good to know if we want to try to maybe increase the number of deployments. Maybe we know each PI, we're only going to do 2 or 3. So here we're right in that 2.1 average. So that's good. It looks like the last couple of PIs, it looks like we've gone a little bit higher. So that's probably something that that could be something that we want to look at, and maybe something we want to celebrate. From a releases standpoint, we can track the detailed releases around that and understand exactly how many releases are we doing per PI, and do we have more or less of those. We can also track this from a build perspective. So are we doing more or less builds going forward? And then when we get into our quality metrics, we can actually drive down into those specific quality metrics as well. From an environments perspective, we can see how, what's our overall velocity and how long is it taking us to get work in. So as we take these deployments and these packages and we're actually rolling them out, how long is it taking us to get things into production? And did we even do some builds? Some of these we didn't even get into production. Here's our pre-production time and how long it's taking us for that. And then here's how long we're spending in staging. So we can use this information then and the history of this to say if we improve staging, maybe we could get things through a little bit faster. It looks like pre-production isn't really a big timing issue, but maybe we've had some quality problems before. So we can drive into that to make sure that we can go ahead and deliver into production as early and as often as we possibly can. From a releases perspective, we can track that, and then we can also link this back to business value. When we did our program planning, we aligned the work to various objectives. We had PI objectives and we had team objectives, and here we can track our planned business value and our actual business value total, or we can go into a chart view of that and see how well we're doing over time. So in this case, let me open this detail up here. So as we look at our program increments and how well we've been doing over time, we can track planned business value to actual business value. We can say how many dollars have we actually delivered based on the work that we said we were going to deliver. So we can look at that planned value number or that actual value number. We can put some monetary information to it. Maybe we're looking at our website traffic and we know that every increase in website traffic brings us a few pennies or whatever that is. Maybe we're looking at our stock price. Maybe we're looking at something else. We can derive these numbers, or we can actually use these numbers then to come up with a score or a dollar amount that we can actually say when we delivered PI4, it actually gave us $217,000 worth of work. All of those deployments that we did inside of PI4. So this is allowing us really to translate what's happening from a team perspective and an update perspective, go back to the business, get the actual number, and then calculate that into a dollar score here for us. So again, just a nice, another set of data points that we can use to say how well are we driving business value. We already looked at investment versus actual cost, so we can actually continue to track that as well. So this is just an example of some of the types of things we can do from a 6-up perspective on productivity metrics. The next section is going to be looking at efficiency. So when we're doing this work, we can track how efficient we're being, and there's a couple of different views here that I have. The first one is monitoring. So if you look at the DevOps Health Radar, one of the things in there is monitoring and how well are we doing. So in this case, I'm looking at the work, if we looked back at the deployment board here, one of the columns is monitoring. So when a deployment goes into this monitoring section, we're going to actually start to track that work, and we'll be able to monitor how well we're doing in that. And we can use this dashboard, the monitor dashboard, to track that work. So in here, we're looking at incidents coming in. So this is an automated component of my incident. So when something breaks or when something goes down, we can actually track and manage that and see exactly what's happening. So hopefully during this, we won't have any incidents, but you never know. And it looks like we just did have an incident here. So I have a brand new outage report coming in. So now we can take this, it's in a new state. It just showed up here. I can actually decide what I want to do with this outage. Is it a known thing? Was it not an outage? We can then decide if that actually did contribute to our downtime metrics, which we can then see over here on the right-hand side. So if this outage was something we needed to deal with, we can go ahead and do that. If not, we can then ignore it, or we can put it into a different funnel if we need to. This downtime metric is actually driven by, and these outages can actually be driven by our mean time to recover and our mean time to acknowledge that this issue happened. So that's what our MTTR and MTTA metrics are showing us here. Let me just open this up a little bit here so we can show it in a bigger mode. What this is monitoring for us is when that incident came in, how long did it take me to review it and acknowledge that it was an issue? Again, we can look at this over time and see if we're getting better or worse on that. So this is actually monitoring what's going on from the production instance perspective and saying it takes us less than an hour in August to go ahead and acknowledge all of the issues that we had or the defects that we had that stopped production perhaps. And then it took us 2 hours to recover that. So maybe not horrible, but if you look at the next month, it got even worse. It took us 6 hours to recover when we had an issue in September. So we're trying to improve these numbers, but looking at things like mean time to recover and mean time to acknowledge where the issues are allow us to then track those types of metrics as we're going through the monitoring process and really try to drive down those numbers with additional testing, with additional automation, with additional tools that we can use to go ahead and prevent us from having these types of issues in the future. So that's what mean time to recover and mean time to acknowledge is. And this is really looking at just the time it took us to recover divided by the number of incidents. That's what the calculation is for mean time to recover, and the same for acknowledgements. How many issues did we have and how long did it take us to acknowledge each one of those? And by capturing that data inside of each one of those incidents, we can actually then measure and track and manage that across the instance. Mean time to value, this is showing us the different phases and stages, and we can track how long it's taking us to deliver that value. It's helpful to identify things like bottlenecks and other details around that. So as we look at how many hours has it taken us to get the value out, or how many days in this case has it taken us to get the value from through the different phases, we can actually track and manage the details there as well. Cycle time is another big one. So we want to see how long did it take us to deliver on these packages and these deployments. How long did it take us from a lead time perspective and a cycle time perspective. So on each one of these, we can track cycle time versus lead time. We saw that on the deployment roadmap and the deployment board as well. We can track our cycle time and our lead time here and make sure that we're doing the right things in terms of tracking that time. From a health perspective, we can include radars into this. In this case, here's a DevOps health radar. We're using a third-party tool to develop the radar, but we can easily show that inside of here. So this is showing how well we're doing on monitoring, responding, releasing. Again, we looked at that monitoring tool a second ago. There may be other data points here that we can use to drive this number. So we're doing better in monitoring, but we can still get there better. If we want to look at end-to-end testing, if we want to try to improve upon something around synthesizing the work, we can then use this information here to help set those other goals and then drive these numbers hopefully outward towards the best scores that we can possibly get. Okay, this is just one way to bring in the health radar and the details around those types of scores and drive that information here. I can show it here. I can, again, create another view of this where maybe I can have a bigger view. From a rolling stats perspective, we can also look at a point in time number, or we can say on average our MTTA number, our time to acknowledge number is 2 hours, 2.3 hours, and our time to recover is 2.4. We can then decide if we want to try to drill down our downtime numbers by month and get that better. 8 hours might not be great, but it might have been better than when we've been doing in the past. So just another way to track what's going on from a monitoring perspective. The other thing we can do in monitoring is look at our traffic numbers. So I can bring traffic numbers directly into here if we want to track our traffic that way, or I can use a separate dashboard. This happens to be a third-party web page that I'm using. Now, the thing I like about this, and even in the monitoring, is we can actually start to use this information we're getting from these traffic websites, something like Google Analytics or some other tool, to actually then update the details in our OKRs. So when we had an OKR information, we might want to drive the number of sessions or the number of users or the number of new accounts that we're having. We can use this data, we can bring it into Targetprocess, and then we can actually use that to update the key results and the objectives that we've set at a higher level. So it just showing you that we can bring in additional data. If you want to align this to other, an entity or an asset that we have inside of Targetprocess, we can do that. Or we can use the data here and maybe bring in the aggregate and then use that to update what's going on at a higher level. Again, it's just showing you that we can actually do it, a number of different ways. It may not make sense to bring in all of this data from a trafficking website into here, or maybe we just want to bring in, the high-level data, the bounce rates, and the average session length, and see if we can improve that month over month, week over week. So just gives us the ability to see the data and also bring it in if we need to go ahead and bring that in. All right, so that shows us productivity and efficiency in terms of monitoring and seeing things like setting specific traffic goals and specific details for the solutions that we're delivering. The last section is looking at quality. So from a quality perspective, I've got a quality dashboard out here, which is probably the easiest and the one we've had the longest inside of our solution. It's really our ability to track things like defects, bugs, how we've been doing and tracking the details and where is that trend line, so we can watch that trend line go down as we're looking at our quality numbers and how well are we doing. As those tickets come in, we want to make sure we understand where those tickets are, and we want to be able to track the urgent ones. Those are the ones that we really care about the most, because they're the ones that obviously are stopping a customer or that we need to drill into. And then we can also look at our standard tickets as well. On any of the reports here, the thing I really like about the way the reporting works is we can always drill into the data, and it'll allow us to deep dive into the data to see exactly what's driving this number. Why was it a 3? Should it have been less? Or what were those 3 urgent tickets? So we can easily jump into the details of that and drill down into those specific tickets for that specific customer detail. So we can always go in and see that detail in there. From a test coverage perspective, again, we can see the high-level view of that, or the test by team. We can also drill into the details and see exactly where that test coverage is as well. So as we're looking at test cases and making sure we have coverage across all of those, making sure that we're executing on those test numbers, that's just how you set it up and make sure that you can manage the details underneath there. Finally, from an incident perspective, we can track those incidents then, and we can decide if it's something that we need to do. Maybe we'll put it under review for now and track the details for those different outages coming in, and then looking at different runs of the work that we're doing, pulling in quality data, making sure that we have run results for the different tests that we're managing and the details around that. So it allows me to track what's passed, what's failed, what's on hold, and so forth. So we can look at the different types of tests, block tests as well, and then manage the details around all of that. So that was 3 different types of metrics. So we looked at productivity metrics. Again, let me just go back to my deployment board one more time. And so we were able to track the productivity of the work and looking at different types of metrics on a productivity dashboard. We looked at efficiency metrics and tracking things from a monitoring perspective, from a dashboard and a trafficking perspective. And then finally, our quality metrics and our quality dashboard views as well. Again, this is just a subset of the views that we have and the reports that we have available. All of the, again, I've added them up here on my favorites, but again, if we're looking at the overall process, all of the different views and the reports that we can run are available here as well inside of Targetprocess. So if there's something that you don't see already, or if you wanted to create a new one, it's actually very easy to create your own as well. So you can create your own reports and pull in other sources of data if you need to as well. So that's just a high level of a number of different ways that we can show these metrics at a portfolio level, at a program level, and at a team level. And I think now it's almost time for us to jump over to questions. So let me just stop sharing here and hand it back over to Nishant and see if there are any questions that we have, anything we can answer in line.
Yeah, I'll jump in there and I'll kind of filter through the questions and see what we can get answered here in the last 15 minutes or so.
Great, thanks, Alex.
Yeah, let's start with, can you point out some key differentiators of Targetprocess to its competitors?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a number of ones that I think of, and I'm very familiar with a couple of the key competitors out there. You know, our ability to create these kind of unique views, dashboards, roadmaps, and boards in general is really a huge differentiator, I think, because it allows us to set up the data where we want it and how we want it, and then easily create those dashboards and the other types of entities that we can do. It's very flexible. It's very flexible. We can help you to create new objects. You can add things like deployments easily into here, or when Safe 6.0 comes out, we can add something new into Safe, from Safe 6.0 if it's something at a portfolio level. So very flexible, and it's very easy to get data reported and visual out to your end users.
How do you track financials and how are they tracked?
Yeah, so the financials is an interesting one. So it depends upon how you want to track them. Oftentimes, we can, in my example that I showed earlier, I showed that we've got story points, and those story points roll up to the higher levels. So I can calculate a run rate on a story point and say it's $111 per story point, which can then drive the financials up. I can also do a top-down where I set a number at my portfolio epic level or even my product level and say here's the budget that I have, and then I can compare that to what's going on from a story point run rate calculation. So that's the ways that we do it. If you wanted to create additional fields in there for financial calculations, we have the program, portfolio, and team levels. We can certainly track that down to those levels as well.
And on that note, does it track the history for audit purposes?
There is history. You can see the changes on the records. Not all the changes are tracked in history, but yes, you can track history.
Does Targetprocess integrate with ServiceNow?
We do have an integration with ServiceNow, yes.
What is the source of the data? Is it data that comes from any standard tool like Jira, Azure, etc.?
Yeah, so the source can be all encompassing inside of Targetprocess. Most of the data that I showed you today in the demonstration was directly out of Targetprocess. So the team level data that we have rolls up from the team, the stories that I showed you earlier roll up from the task to the story up to the feature. If you want to integrate with Jira or another tool, we can synchronize the stories from Jira or the epics from Jira into Targetprocess. So you can then do your work in either solution. So you can update in Targetprocess and it's bi-directionally synced, or you can make it one direction. So I do all my work in a different tool, for instance. So we can integrate with Azure, we can integrate with Jira and many other tools that are out there. So if there's something specific one, we can certainly get you more details on that.
How are you handling program-to-program dependencies?
Yeah, so we have the ability to create dependencies across entities. So from I can create a dependency just between two programs if I want to in our solution, or I can do that from a portfolio epic perspective. Let's say one portfolio epic is in one program, one is another program. We can create a dependency either from program to program, or I can do it from the epic to epic level and then drill all the way down. So it just depends upon what works for you and how you want to do the reporting on that. But you can create dependencies across any entities and have that relationship be translated.
Okay. Thinking of the DORA research, what's your perspective on those specific measures?
Yeah, I have to refresh my memory on the DORA research. So we'll have to get back to you.
We'll come back to that one.
Yeah, we'll have to get back to that one.
You were using dollars to reflect business value, which is great. How does target process determine the actual business value?
Yeah, so business value can be translated in a couple of different ways. So the way I was doing it there was looking at the planned business value and the actual business value that we put on our team objectives and our program objectives. So for instance, if someone said, if you just want to use a generic value points, like 10 value points, we can translate that into dollars and say, based on history, every value point that we deliver is, $15,000 or whatever that number is based on history. So if we wanted to use that kind of a scoring, we can actually use the actual business value that we get from the business team on those specific objectives. Now those objectives can roll up into, or we can have the data roll up into our key results for our OKRs, for our objectives and our key results. So we can actually put a value number at that key result level as well, and we can translate that. Another way that we do it is you can actually look at the story points or the feature points, and you can derive value from the story and the feature points as well. So if there's not one way that you can actually derive that value. Another way, I was speaking actually to an icon coach just a couple of weeks ago, and she and I were talking about just pure count. So how many stories did we deliver, and there's a value for delivering each story. So you can do it as simply as I delivered 15 stories. It's 10,000 dollars per story. That's $15,000 or $150,000.
What metrics would you suggest for non-IT related work, such as government or manufacturing industries?
Yeah, I still think cycle time and lead time is a really good metric to use. And the way that Target Process calculates that and does it automatically for you is really helpful. So for instance, if you're trying to decrease the, if you're processing widgets and it takes you, 10 hours to process a widget end to end, you can actually track the lead time and the cycle time of that and make sure that you manage your widgets better. If you're delivering, if you're creating content, you can measure how long it takes you to create that content, and then can we improve and make it faster to create the same content by reusing, maybe doing other types of tools, maybe using another solution. You can actually measure and track that. I think that's a great way to do it. We also looked at usage statistics, and if you build in, even if it's a non-software solution, if you build in a way to capture how much what you deliver is being used, then you can actually use that to improve upon how you're doing.
Hey, Mark, can I add a few more specific to manufacturing? It's, we can also calculate. I mean, we can define metrics like production volume, production downtime, defect density. In terms of, again, flow, quality, and business outcomes, I think we can define everything, irrespective of what that sector is of business. If it is government or production, I mean, we can easily define those into the system. Is that right?
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, and I think getting back to your three your types of metrics, your qualitative metrics, your quantitative metrics, and your business outcomes, you can always come up with a metric around business outcomes, like what is it that we're trying to achieve? Why are we doing this? So I think looking at framing your metrics in those broad categories, which is kind of what I did in my demonstration as well, looking at productivity, looking at efficiency and quality, then we can craft our metrics underneath there to make sure we're delivering the the right outcomes we're looking to deliver. Does that make sense, Nishant?
Yes, Mark. Alex, back to you.
So do you integrate with other tools that were not shown in this demo?
Yes, yep, we have a lot of other integrations. All those are available on our website at targetprocess.com. We can also provide details if there's a specific one that you're looking for. So especially around DevOps, there's going to be a lot of different ways to integrate. If we don't have a predefined integration, we also have an API, an open API, and we also support webhooks and generic webhooks as well to bring in data or send data out. So there's lots of different ways we can integrate with tools that are out there. I think it's really, that's one of the biggest changes I've seen over the last 5 or 6 years is a solution needs to be able to easily integrate and easily report. And not all the tools that are out there can do that, but I know Targetprocess is a solution that we can really make sure that we maximize your ability to integrate and report and get that visibility.
Incident is an idea. Is there a category or custom field to identify it as an incident?
There is there's a idea type that I created called incident, so I can filter out other types of ideas as well. So the thing we have in Targetprocess for our ideas is a way to capture things from a web page, so you can deliver them outside. The way I did it in this demo is I actually just had a job running in the background that was monitoring the tools, and it auto created that incident. So it's using a request type.
What areas, as you scale, what areas could you improve upon at Targetprocess?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think we're always looking to improve. We just had our quarterly planning, which we use Targetprocess to go ahead and manage that. A couple things that we're looking at doing. Actually, we just added the ability to do like fist to five voting, and we've got the ability to do story point estimating now, and you can do estimating on retrospectives. But one of the areas we're spending a lot of time on now is how do we better do remote planning, remote PI planning, just remote interaction in general. So we've done some great updates already to our solution, but expect to see a lot more around how do we, for obvious reasons, how do we make sure that we can support things like remote planning? How do we integrate with Miro better? How do we integrate with tools like Mural that are out there, and other ways to do that? So I expect to see a lot more around remote integrations. We also have a mobile app, and we can always improve upon that as well.
And how are you computing the actual business value?
Actual business value is a number that we get from the business. So it's either talk to them face to face or call them on the phone and get the number. It's somewhat of a subjective number right now. If we wanted to, we could put some objective measures on that, and we could do a calculation on it. But for right now, as part of the safe process, when you talk to the business after you've deployed, you can go back and get that actual business value. One way that I've done it in the past is if you want to link it to a specific, we looked at some of those traffic metrics or other types of targeted metrics. You can actually derive that from another source if you wanted to go ahead and derive it from another source.
What is the name of the tool or tools that you've been using to put all of the put in all of the dashboards and metrics?
Yeah, so the VisiDrop is what we use to create the dashboards and to update them. So it's our homegrown tool that we have that we can use for that. So you can move things in and out there and update the dashboards themselves. I've also integrated with other tools that are out there like Google Analytics and Google Sheets and other types of third-party tools as well. Miro was another integration that I showed in this demonstration, but we have lots of other integrations and ways we can do that.
Awesome. Well, I think we covered all of the questions that we had. If you guys have any final comments that you want to leave the audience with, now would be the time.
So again, I mean, to go back into what we talked about, try to define metrics associated with your business, with your system. Someone asked about Dora. Just to talk a little bit about the Optima system. It's the Blue Optima that they asked. I would say that it's more at an output level. It's at the developer level. It's very important. It's got a lot of research behind it, and it defines a lot of metrics that you can easily capture. But again, that's only at the team level. It needs to be scaled. It needs to go up to the enterprise level. So you would need, more impact metrics. You need more leading metrics, balancing metrics, and internal and external metrics. So when you define this, keep in mind to define it as a whole for your organization, and then use something to track it. Like a tool like Targetprocess would be great to track top to bottom and integrate it with what you use today. So it would give you that results that you're looking for, and it would make sure that you become a learning organization over the course of time. Mark, anything to add?
No, I think you hit it right on the head there. Thanks for the clarification on that, and thanks for everybody's time in this. And I appreciate Icon as well helping us out. They've been a great partner of ours when we need to go somewhere. Icon is a great resource for us for all of our safe training and other types of details. So I appreciate the time and you guys giving us this opportunity to present with you.
Thank you as well, Mark, and we appreciate your time. Thank you to all of the folks who joined today. We will be distributing the recording. We appreciate you joining and look forward to having you in the next session. All right, guys, thank you and have a good rest of your day.